factoring using trial and error, and what I call is the short way. An example would be a trinomial, and I'm supposed to factor this. But remember, always ask yourself the questions. Does this have a GCF? It does not. Is this the difference of two squares? Of course not, because there are three things there. It could possibly be a perfect square trinomial, but y squared would have to be perfect. Well, it is, because y times y. But 24 is not a perfect square. So then this is when I get to trial and error. I try something. If it doesn't work, I try something else. The reason I call this the short way is because the coefficient of the squared term is just 1. So that's why I think you could draw your two parentheses and get to work. So those are the type of problems that we're going to be doing in this video. For the first step, I just want you to draw your two parentheses. Then I want you to look at the constant. That is the number without a variable, the 24. And I want you to write down all of the combinations that you could use to multiply to get 24 or to get that number. And let's think about this. Are you going to have a positive and a negative? If this number was a negative, you would have a positive times a negative. And if that is the case, when I'm trying to get to the middle term, I will actually be subtracting. Or is the last term positive, which it is in this case, a positive 24, which means that I can use a positive times a positive, or I could use a negative times a negative. But whichever one I use, two positives or two negatives, I will be adding them to get to the middle. Of course, I will need to decide to use positive or negative. Let's get to work. Directions are to factor. I will use trial and error short way to get 24. Let's write down all of our combinations. Go ahead, write them down. Don't sit there and try to ponder them in your head. It's going to be much faster if you just write them down. By the time you're pondering, I can be through with the problem. So stop pondering. Write them down. To get 24, my options are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8. Oh, we have lots of options here. 4 times 6, 5 will not go into it evenly, and then I'm back at 6. Which combinations work? Okay, I want a positive 24, so I could use a positive times a positive. Or I could use a negative times a negative will get me 24. I want my middle term to be positive. So I will use a positive times a positive. So I'm drawing my two parentheses. I know to get y squared, it will be y times y. To get a positive 24, I think we have decided that 3 plus 8 is 11. And we're going to use a positive times a positive. Positive 3, a positive 8. And if you do FOIL, you will get right back to where you started. I am supposed to factor. This will be trial and error short way. I will quickly draw my two parentheses. To get y squared, I will need y times y. And now look at the last term, the constant, that is negative 24. A negative. So I will need a positive times a negative. And since I will be using a positive times a negative to get negative 24, I will not be adding to get to the middle. I will be subtracting. What are my combinations? Write them down in order. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. If it's not one of those, it's prime. When I subtract 3 and 8, I will get 5. 3 and 8 is the winner. Which one should be positive and which one should be negative? I want my middle term to be positive, so I will put my largest number by the positive. You can check that with FOIL. Let's do another one. Factor. This will be trial and error short way. I'm going to draw my two parentheses. To get x squared, yes, I know, I need x times x. Look at the last number, the constant, the negative 7. I have a negative 7. In order to get a negative 7, I have to use a positive times a negative. I will go ahead and write those in. What are the combos we can use to get 7? There's only one combination you can use, 1 times 7. Luckily, when I subtract 1 and 7, I will get 6. Okay, but where did I put the 1? Where did I put the 7? I want my middle term to be negative, so I'm going to put the largest number by the negative. And then when I multiply this out using FOIL, I will get the right answer. Once again, we are factoring. Hopefully, you're getting the rhythm now. This is trial and error short way. Draw your 2 parentheses. To get x squared, yes, you are correct. You need x times x. Look at the last number. It is 8. It is a positive 8, which means I have a choice here. I could use a positive times a positive, or I could use a negative times a negative to get 8. Well, I want my middle term to be positive. So I will use a positive times a positive. Let's start with our combinations. Write them down. Don't ponder. 1 times 8 is 8. 2 times 4 is 8. I have the same sign, so I will be adding to get to the middle. You are correct. It is 2 and 4. 2 plus 4 is 6. If I used 1 and 8, I would get 9 in the middle. Did it matter where I put the 2 or where I put the 4? No, they were both positive. And I could put x plus 4 times x plus 2. Let's carry on. We are still factoring. X squared plus x minus 30. This will be trial and error short way. That is what we are practicing in this video. To get x squared, yes, I will need x times x. Look at the last term, the constant, a negative 30. In order to multiply 2 things and get a negative, I will need a positive times a negative. So to get to the middle term, I will not be adding this time, I will be subtracting. The combinations are 1 times 30, 2 times 15. If I subtract those, I will get 13. No. 3 times 10 is 30. But if I subtract those, I will get 7. 4 will not divide evenly into 30. And I have 5 times 6. And if I subtract those, yes, I do get 1. 6 is the largest number here. I want my middle term to be positive, so I will put the largest number by the positive. And you can check this using FOIL and see that you are getting really good at this. One more to go. Factor y squared minus 13y plus 30. Once again, draw your 2 parentheses. To get y squared, we know that we will have y times y. Look at your last term, your constant. It is 30. It is a positive 30, so I could use a positive times a positive. I could use a negative times a negative. I want my middle term to be negative. Therefore, in this problem, I will use a negative times a negative. Now, I will be adding because I have the same sign, so I will be adding to get to my middle term. What are the combos for 30? 1 times 30. 2 times 15. If I add those, I get 17. 3 times 10. 5 times 6. If it's not one of those, you have done your best. You write down prime or write down not factorable. But 3 plus 10 is 13. Does it matter where I put the 3 and where I put the 10? No, because they both have the negative sign there. I could write y minus 10 times y minus 3. I could do a little FOIL, and I'm right back to where I started. Okay, good luck on your factoring.